One of the Kaiju was already right behind them, staring them down. Terrified, the kids froze. Still, the brother stepped in front of his sister, determined to protect her. Hikaru also believed at the time that this was Jin Narumi, Japan's top anti-Kaiju fighter. In the following scene, she was seen reading a newspaper that highlighted a recent success by the defense force. She wondered where Mina was, visibly annoyed. We then learned that Hikaru had become the assistant to the commander of the 1st Division. When Narumi saw the same news on his phone, he grew frustrated with the media. They had made it seem as though Mina was the one who had defeated the Kaiju he actually brought down, especially since her photo was much larger than his. The internet buzzed once again with the claim that Mina had taken out the monster, which irritated him to no end. He came across comments mocking him, saying that Mina was stealing all the credit and suggesting he was probably crying over it. Others said he was being dramatic and that a commander should act with more dignity. Hikaru, stunned into silence, could only watch as Japan's strongest Kaiju fighter ranted online like a keyboard warrior. When Narumi's phone started ringing, Hikaru asked if he was going to answer it since it had been ringing for a while. Narumi brushed it off, saying it was likely a dull meeting with Isao and Eiji, sitting across from each other with serious expressions, discussing trivial topics. He grumbled about having to attend such a boring meeting in the middle of the day. Just then, Eiji stormed in, kicked him again, and told him he had no choice, it was part of the job. Hikaru sighed as she took a sip of her water. Eiji grabbed Narumi and dragged him off, despite Narumi's protests about how important the meeting really was. Eiji replied that it concerned Monster Number 8, which instantly got Narumi's attention, and Hikaru's as well. Meanwhile, Kofko was doing push-ups in his prison cell, frustrated that 5 days had passed and he hadn't achieved anything. He remembered Isao's challenge to prove his worth and began to question what he needed to do. Kofko then decided that no matter what it took, he would do whatever the defense force asked of him, for the sake of his comrades who still believed in him. The door suddenly swung open, catching Kofko off guard. A group of troops entered to escort him, and he immediately thought this might finally be the moment he'd been anticipating. When they arrived at the chief's office, Kofko was stunned to see both Isao and Narumi already there. He was confused, wondering why the commander of the 1st Division would be present for this. Without wasting time, Isao addressed Kofko and announced that he would be placing him in the 1st Division. Kofko was completely taken aback. Isao elaborated, explaining that by merging one of history's most powerful Kaiju with the country's strongest anti-Kaiju soldier, they would form a unit capable of tackling any monster-related crisis. He was offering Kofko the opportunity to prove his worth in the upcoming operation and earn everyone's trust. Kofko stood frozen, realizing that being valued as Kaiju number 8 wasn't exactly what he had hoped for, but for now, survival was his priority. Just as Kofko was about to respond, Narumi abruptly spoke up and opposed the decision. Kofko turned in surprise, and even Kikoru and Eiji were left stunned by Narumi's reaction. Narumi argued that his own strength should be more than enough for the 1st Division. As he turned to walk away, Isao firmly stated that Narumi alone wouldn't be sufficient. This made Narumi flinch. Isao then explained that Kaiju number 9, who could disguise itself as a human and was still in hiding, and Kaiju number 10, who led an army of monsters against the defense force, posed far greater threats than any creature they had encountered before. He emphasized that while they were making progress in their daily monster suppression efforts, these new enemies kept evolving in ways they hadn't yet figured out. Isao reminded Narumi that disasters tend to strike when people become overconfident, believing they can handle any situation. These events often shatter their expectations and understanding of the world. Because of this, it was crucial for them to stay flexible and evolve alongside the threats. As he spoke, Narumi, Kofko, and Eiji listened carefully. Narumi exhaled, starting to understand how much trust Isao had placed in him. Turning to Kofko, Narumi stated that it would be more practical to use Kaiju number 8 as a tool under his command. Kofko and Kikoru were both stunned by his words. Before Isao could continue, Kofko stepped forward and addressed Narumi. He explained that he couldn't afford to die until he fulfilled his purpose. Kofko gave a respectful salute, declaring that for the sake of his mission, he would accept any help he could get, including becoming part of the 1st Division and serving under Narumi's leadership. Narumi looked at him and replied indifferently, saying he didn't care about Kofko's motivations or beliefs. What mattered to him were results and strength. He warned that if Kofko made a mistake again, he would personally take him down and turn him into a battlesuit. With that, Narumi left the room. Kofko saluted once more and thanked him. In the next scene, an earthquake suddenly struck a populated area, causing panic. People commented that these tremors had been occurring more often lately, though many believed it would stop soon. However, instead of dying down, the quake intensified. Roads cracked open and buildings started collapsing, throwing the city into chaos. A massive hole appeared in the center of Shinagawa City, and frightened residents stared into its depths, only to be horrified when they saw eyes looking back at them. The hole was swarming with insect-like monsters that began flooding up to the surface. Meanwhile, back at the 1st Division base, morning training had just concluded. Kikoru, full of determination, decided she couldn't waste any time. She headed straight to Narumi and declared that today was the day he'd finally participate in a one-on-one training session with her. When Kikoru opened the door to Narumi's room, she was surprised to find him kneeling down, leaving her confused. It turned out he was bowing because he was asking Kikoru for money. He was baffled by how his paycheck from the previous week had suddenly vanished. Kikoru pointed out that he had spent a lot on Amazon purchases, which explained where his money went. She was irritated that her commander would ask a subordinate for cash, but Narumi clarified he wasn't begging, he was simply requesting financial assistance. Kikoru wasn't having it and firmly told him to stop stalling and join her for training. Before they could continue, an alarm suddenly blared, catching both their attention. Eiji showed up and announced that it was time for action. In the next scene, Narumi, Kikoru, and the rest of the squad suited up for deployment. Narumi joked that he had been in the middle of an intense negotiation, but now it was time to work. He led the 1st Division out, confidently declaring that they were about to crush the Kaiju. Over in Shinagawa, chaos had erupted. People were running, desperately trying to escape a giant, ant-like Kaiju charging through the streets. News broadcasters urged everyone to evacuate immediately and head to designated shelters. A man checked his phone and told others nearby that there was a less crowded path toward Shelter R56, suggesting they take that route. Amidst the panic, a young boy and his little sister were left behind near a car. The girl was crying in fear, and her brother did his best to calm her, telling her that the 1st Division would arrive any second. He reassured her that Commander Narumi would wipe out the monsters. But just then, a cracking sound came from nearby. When they turned to look, one of the Kaiju was already right behind them, staring them down. Terrified, the kids froze. Still, the brother stepped in front of his sister, determined to protect her. Even as fear gripped him, he kept believing Narumi would come. And he was right. Just as the monster was about to strike, Narumi appeared out of nowhere, plunging his blade into the Kaiju's back. The beast dropped instantly, and the children were stunned for a moment. Then, realizing their hero had saved them, their fear turned into overwhelming relief and excitement. Narumi then called over the young boy and playfully scolded him for not using honorifics when addressing a commander. As a punishment, he told the boy to go home safely and post "Commander Narumi is so cool" 10 times on social media using his mom's phone. The boy eagerly agreed, and troops quickly escorted the siblings to safety. Afterward, Narumi checked in with his platoon leaders, Kanashi and Miyoke, about their current status. Kanashi reported that 4 Kaiju had been identified in their area and that they were expecting to handle them quickly. Miyoke shared that their subjugation operation was already complete. Narumi instructed them to first assess the broader situation, prioritize the safety of civilians, and address threats accordingly. If needed, they would redirect monsters to predetermined subjugation zones. Both platoon leaders acknowledged the orders and sprang into action. Narumi then contacted Kikoru and Kofko, referring to Kofko as Kaiju number 8, and tasked them with clearing out all remaining monsters in the designated neutralization zone. He reassured them that all civilians in the area had already been evacuated, so they were free to go all out and deliver results. Both Kofko and Kikoru were fired up, determined to prove their worth to their captain. For Kofko, this was also his first real chance to show Director General Isao just how valuable he could be in combat. Soon, the first wave of Kaiju reached the battlefield. Kikoru charged forward to intercept, wielding her enormous axe. Narumi instructed platoon leader Rin Shinonome to provide backup if needed. But before that could happen, a Kaiju suddenly exploded in front of them. It was already taken out. Kikoru had slain it with a single powerful horizontal slash. The strength of her attack surprised some of the veteran officers nearby. Despite their reactions, Kikoru wasn't satisfied. She felt her speed still fell short of Vice Captain Hashina's, and she couldn't help but compare her strength to Captain Mina's superior attack force. These thoughts ran through Kikoru's mind as she took down her second Kaiju. Narumi and Rin were clearly impressed by her offensive precision, and even Kofko cheered her on from a distance. Suddenly, a Kaiju appeared behind platoon leader Rin, prompting Kikoru to scold her for letting her guard down. Though Rin was slightly irritated by Kikoru's smug tone, she secretly admired her spirit. Meanwhile, Eiji and one of the other platoon leaders joked with Narumi, teasing that the new girl was outperforming him compared to his own first year in the defense force. But Narumi wasn't in the mood for banter. His mind was elsewhere. The Kaiju attack felt off. While it wasn't unheard of for ant-type monsters to appear above ground, they usually stayed in underground tunnels. The sudden, large-scale appearance in the heart of the city was highly unusual. It reminded them all of the Kaiju raid on the Tachikawa base months earlier. This pattern suggested the presence of a commanding, intelligent Kaiju directing the swarm. Just then, Eiji received a report. Multiple Kaiju had breached the western region of the neutralization zone. That sector was under Kofka Hibino's protection. Now it was his moment to act. At the temporary HQ, Kofka was being closely observed by researchers and experts brought in by Director General Isao. Some high-ranking officials were also present, many of whom still disapproved of the decision to let Kaiju number 8 live. Finally, Kofka came face-to-face with the first ant-type Kaiju in his area. Choosing to conserve energy, he activated only a partial transformation, believing his full power wasn't necessary yet. He also used the 1% boost provided by his combat suit to leap high and deliver a heavy punch. To his surprise, his attack had little to no effect on the creature. It countered with a bite, launching him through the air. Kofka managed to stabilize himself mid-air and land safely, but the observers were clearly confused. Why wasn't he transforming into his Kaiju form? The answer: Kofka was holding back. After his last battle with Isao, he feared losing control of his body again. That hesitation kept him from unleashing his full power. Suddenly, the Kaiju spewed acid at him, but Kofka narrowly dodged the attack just in time. The acid was so corrosive that it instantly melted the concrete beneath Kofka's feet. Realizing the severity of the situation, Kofka understood this wasn't the time to hold back. If he truly wanted to reach his goal of standing beside Mina, he had to give it everything he had. Determined, Kofka began his transformation. High-energy readings surged from his body, immediately picked up by the monitoring equipment. But then, something strange happened. The transformation stalled halfway through. Kofka froze in confusion. The researchers observing him were equally baffled. Before he could react, the enemy Kaiju took advantage of the opening and delivered a crushing blow, sending shards of debris flying in every direction. Kofka attempted to transform again. He focused, strained, did everything he could, but nothing happened. No matter how hard he tried, his body refused to respond. It was an anticlimactic and terrifying moment. Even the Shinomiyas, father and daughter, looked on, visibly concerned. No one understood why Kofka couldn't transform. Then, suddenly, a new energy reading appeared on the radar. Its intensity suggested that it was a Honju-class Kaiju, a leader. Narumi and Eiji quickly speculated that the mastermind behind the invasion was about to show itself. When they asked for the exact location of the energy source, the answer sent a chill down their spines. It was directly beneath Kofka's position. A monstrous figure burst from underground. Kaiju number 9 had arrived. Riding atop a giant ant Kaiju, Kaiju number 9 emerged dramatically from below, its piercing eyes locked onto Kofka. Kofka was frozen in shock as he realized that number 9 had burst forth from the head of the ant Kaiju. Narumi, Eiji, and Kikoru looked on with growing dread. The leader of the Kaiju horde had revealed itself, and its ominous presence filled the battlefield. Kaiju number 9's gaze swept across the area, probing, searching. He had sensed Kaiju number 8 earlier, but now he couldn't detect him. After a moment, his attention locked onto Kofka. The realization dawned. Kofka was Kaiju number 8. Kofka's stomach dropped. Just like him, Kaiju number 9 had the ability to detect fellow Kaiju. That meant there was no hiding now. Before Kofka could act, a sharp shot rang out. A bullet tore through his left shoulder. He cried out in pain. It wasn't meant to kill, it was a warning. Kaiju number 9 wasn't here to destroy Kofka immediately. He was here to torment him, to force him to transform. Kofka collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony, his mind racing. Could he transform now? Would his body finally respond? Or would he fall here, helpless? Narumi inquired about the status of Kofka's transformation into Kaiju number 8 at the headquarters, but unfortunately, Kofka was still unable to transform. Vice Captain Eiji panicked, fearing that they might completely lose Kaiju number 8. Narumi quickly took action to help Kofka personally, but the ground beneath him suddenly shook. The road collapsed, and a large ant-type Kaiju emerged from below. Moreover, there was another Kaiju reading with it. Atop its head, another Kaiju number 9 appeared, an utterly unexpected development that shocked everyone. Narumi wondered whether Kaiju number 9 had the ability to clone itself. Given the situation, Rin realized that Narumi could not assist Kofka, so she decided to help him herself. However, she was also suddenly unable to leave, as she had to face a massive Kaiju herself. Shockingly, this was one of the Kaiju they had already killed earlier. Apparently, just like what the 3rd Division had experienced before, the Kaiju corpses had suddenly revived all at once. And if this was indeed the same case, then their fortitude had increased. Worse still, the revived Kaiju were now significantly stronger than before. All these mounting disadvantages became overwhelming once Kaiju number 9 arrived. After reviving the fallen Kaiju and deploying even more powerful versions to keep the others busy, Kaiju number 9 set his sights on Kofka. His goal: to kill Kofka and steal the power of Kaiju number 8. Kofka, completely helpless, was bombarded by rapid-fire bullets from the enemy. The ant-type Kaiju gave him no opening to stand or counter. Kofka knew how dangerous his opponent was and that he had to finish him off quickly. Desperately, he tried once again to transform, but it was no use. Frustration consumed Kofka. He couldn't understand what was happening to him, and he began to despair. Kaiju number 9 prepared a barrage of bullets and bid farewell to Kofka, who had no place left to run. But just in time, an ally arrived. Kaiju number 9 was suddenly split in half, stunned by the unexpected attack. It turned out that Kikoru was the one who had come to the rescue. Not only did she bisect the enemy, but she also brought down the ant-type Kaiju it was riding. Kofka felt a sense of relief when he saw Kikoru. The enemy, while regenerating, sensed something familiar about the girl. But Kikoru simply told him that it no longer mattered who she was, because she was there to finish him off. The regenerating Kaiju and the focused Kikoru stared at each other for a brief moment. Back at headquarters, before Director General Isao could rise from his seat, Itami quickly restrained him. Itami knew that Isao intended to deploy himself into battle using the weaponized Kaiju number 2, should Kaiju number 8 go berserk again. However, Itami reminded him that using the Kaiju weapon reduced his lifespan by several years each time. Isao assured him that he hadn't forgotten. In fact, he saw this crisis as a critical test for the next generation of Defense Force commanders. Meanwhile, upon learning that Kofka was still unable to transform, Kikoru speculated that Kaiju number 9 might be suppressing his transformation somehow. Suddenly, the enemy launched a devastating attack, the same type that had previously injured Kikoru. But she had significantly improved since then and was now able to dodge the projectiles with precision. Kikoru and Kofka quickly devised a plan. She would strike Kaiju number 9 with a powerful attack, and when the enemy began to regenerate, Kofka would use that brief energy shift as a chance to transform. The idea was that the Kaiju's regeneration process might temporarily weaken its suppression, giving Kofka an opening. Reluctantly, Kikoru admitted that she needed Kaiju number 8's help to win. And so, their joint assault began. The enemy, displeased with the 2 versus 1 scenario, split into 2 separate bodies, much to Kikoru's surprise. Then it unleashed another torrent of bullets. Kikoru expertly parried the shots aimed at her, while Kofka managed to dodge most of them. Even with her past experience fighting Kaiju number 9, Kikoru still found it difficult to read its unpredictable movements. Amid the chaos, another Kaiju silently approached from behind, ready to flank her. The enemy fired bullets again, but this time, it concentrated all its shots on Kikoru, who struggled to dodge and parry. As a result, she was struck in the stomach area. Kofka shouted out in extreme concern for Kikoru, especially as the enemy lined her up for its next attack. But in the blink of an eye, Kikoru suddenly appeared right in front of the enemy's face. The enemy was stunned, shocked by her strength, speed, and sheer resilience. This was no longer the same girl he had once injured. Kikoru, tired of her past defeats, had resolved to become the savior of the day. She began battering the enemy with extreme speed and overwhelming power. From the sidelines, Itami observed just how much her abilities had improved. He even compared her to her mother, Hikari Shinomiya, an iconic figure in the Defense Force. Hikari, the former 2nd Division captain, had been a legendary warrior who fought like a Valkyrie. She was also the wielder of the weaponized Kaiju number 4 and was frequently featured on TV. Kikoru had always admired her mother deeply. Whenever Hikari returned home late at night, exhausted from work, Kikoru would eagerly run up to greet her. Isao, her father, often told her to let her mother rest. But no matter how fatigued Hikari was, she always found the energy to play with her daughter. One evening, after a long mission, Kikoru told her that classmates had seen her on the news that morning. Hikari asked if anyone had gotten hurt in the incident. When Kikoru replied that there were no injuries, Hikari smiled with relief. As Hikari picked her up, Kikoru noticed a hidden injury on her mother's arm. Hikari brushed it off, saying she had fought a strong Kaiju earlier but it wasn't serious. Then, out of nowhere, little Kikoru declared that she wanted to join the defense force, to protect her mother from harm. Her parents exchanged surprised glances, moved by their daughter's determination. Hikari smiled and gently told her that if Kikoru ever found herself in danger, she too would come to her rescue. However, years later, a series of cataclysmic events brought on by the infamous Kaiju No. 6 changed everything. Hikari died in the line of duty. The entire nation mourned her loss, and those who had loved her were devastated. But without Hikari's sacrifice, countless more lives would have been lost to Kaiju No. 6. Kikoru was filled with self-reproach, calling herself a liar for failing to protect her mother. She wanted to cry to her father for comfort, but when she looked into his eyes and saw the intense, pent-up anger and grief, she held back her tears. As she battled Kaiju No. 9, her promise to her mother echoed in her mind. Though she had failed to save her, she had vowed to grow stronger, strong enough to ensure that no one under her protection would ever die. She swore she would never let a comrade fall on a mission she was part of. Those memories became her fuel. Empowered by her determination, Kikoru launched an incredibly powerful horizontal slash. Kaiju No. 9 dodged the attack, but another danger loomed. From below, the ant-type Kaiju targeted her, preparing explosive bullets. Kikoru was left with no ground to stand on and was in a perilous position. Fortunately, Kofko stepped in. Though badly injured, he used the last of his strength to knock the enemy off balance, saving Kikoru. However, he paid the price. His left leg took further damage. Still, his sacrifice gave Kikoru the moment she needed to recover and ready her next attack. She unleashed Squadron-style axe technique No. 6, Daruma Dropper, a brutal series of spinning vertical slashes that tore through the air like a tornado. After landing her attack, Kikoru turned to Kofko and shouted, urging him to transform into Kaiju No. 8 while the enemy was still regenerating. Kofko tried. He closed his eyes, focusing with everything he had. But something strange happened. His consciousness was suddenly pulled inward, transported to a strange realm inside his mind. There, he came face to face with the Kaiju that dwelled within him. Startled, Kofko was struck with a horrifying vision. He saw himself successfully transforming into Kaiju No. 8, only to lose control. In that vision, he had killed Kikoru, and when he turned around, he saw the corpses of his friends and comrades strewn behind him. When Kofko snapped back to reality, he was still in human form. His hands were trembling and covered in blood. His attempt to transform into Kaiju No. 8 had failed, again. But now, it was clear, Kaiju No. 9 wasn't suppressing Kofko's transformation. It was Kofko's own fear. Since the earlier plan had failed, the enemy regenerated swiftly and launched a fresh attack. Two massive explosive bullets were fired, one aimed at Kofko and the other at Kikoru. Neither of them could dodge. Kikoru used her giant axe to block the impact, but it shattered upon contact. Kofko, on the other hand, took the full force of the blast head-on. Coughing and battered, Kofko turned to Kikoru and confessed what he had realized. The real reason he couldn't transform was because he feared losing himself to the Kaiju within him, feared becoming a monster who might kill the very allies he wanted to protect. But Kikoru snapped. "Is that really all it is?" she demanded, her voice burning with frustration. She felt insulted, not just by Kofko's fear, but by what it implied. As she stood before him, blooded but defiant, she asked how he could be so casual about her strength, her resilience. How could he underestimate her, Mina, Reno, Hoshina, and the entire defense force? She reminded him that she had even promised to kill him herself if he ever lost control, because she was strong enough to do it. Kofko was stunned into silence. Her words struck deep. He wasn't just afraid of losing control, he was disrespecting the very people who had stood beside him in battle. And worst of all, he was underestimating himself. Kikoru, still remembering her mother's bravery, couldn't accept that Kofko would hold such little faith in the defense force. To her, it was a betrayal of everything they stood for. Overwhelmed, Kofko dropped to his knees, tears welling in his eyes. He couldn't believe how far he'd strayed. He'd forgotten the power of the people around him, and his own strength. But now, He remembered. He remembered the promise Kikoru made. The promise that she would stop him if she had to. And now, he finally believed. With a roar of determination, like a warrior awakening, Kofko shouted at the top of his lungs, shaking the battlefield. Kikoru and Kaiju number 9 both looked toward him in awe and disbelief. Kofko had finally transformed. He was now Kaiju number 8. Meanwhile, on the front lines, the other members of the defense force continued their fierce battle against waves of resurrected ant-type Kaiju. Eiji and Rin fought desperately to hold their ground, overwhelmed by the sheer numbers. Then, a message came in from the neutralization zone. Kofko had transformed. Narumi, hearing the news, wasted no time. Phase 2 of the operation begins now, he ordered. Rin, though relieved, questioned whether they had been right to send Kikoru to Kofko's side in the first place. But deep down, she hoped it had made all the difference.